Do you hear that ringing in your headset? When the power supply of your headset is low, the wiring within the energy conduit does not change directions enough times per unit of time, does not change directions quickly enough to avoid hitting the walls of the inside of the wire. And it generates those electric noises. It is why you feel the vibrations in your chest as the river of sadness flows through the hole in your heart. The scratching up your gums. All a result of low energy, either psychic or electrical. In either case, whether in the case of ringing headset or aching heart, check your power supply. This animal has a low power supply. It is of an abused lineage. Big, beautiful muscles and faces, expressions, charisma. They are a result of adornments, nourishment, support from other mortals. A creature like this of an abused lineage is slim, dottery, shaking, fearful, indulging in fear, drawn to violence, to death, to filth, drawn to indulge in the morbid and macabre, drawn to indulge in the morbid and macabre aspects of life. Uncontrollable bowels, premature ejaculation, stiff motor functions. All of these things are, perhaps not, all of these things are a result of low energy. Having beauty, both of spirit and body, is expensive and dangerous, and are only attainable when one knows you have the support, and is only attainable when the mortal spirit feels it has the support of its fellow kin, and is only attainable when the mortal spirit senses that it has support from its own kind. But when one is abandoned, abused, spurned by one's fellow mortal, the body transforms into an easier state, a safer state, though ultimately still meaningless. Mortals are made of inanimate objects, after all. They don't stop, change direction to create these defense mechanisms. They are incidental results of low energy. Everything begins to fail, though these misfirings can often be beneficial to the survival of one who's been abandoned. The tremulous dottery emaciation is as a result that when one is exposed to the elements for prolonged periods of time, one is exposed to all the woes of nature. There are many ails that would use the life force of the being derived of the mitochondrial energy cells, that would use the energy of. There are many woes. There are many ails of the mortal world. There are many ails of the natural world that would use the energy of the mitochondrial. There are many ails of the mortal world. There are many ails of the mortal world that would use the mitochondrial DNA. There are many ails of the mortal world that would use the power supply from the mitochondria of the red blood cell of the mortal being against itself. Big, strong, beautiful beings can afford large mass and plenty of blood because they are protected, shielded from the elements by the assistance and support of their fellow mortals. Big beefy boy can afford those big muscles and the blood that allows the as well as the delivery of energy to his facial muscles and and the delivery of energy from blood to his musculature in his body and face that allow the charismatic cadence and the absence of the dead expressions. For diseases like malaria, especially from where you're being, especially in the locations, especially in the places that your descendants came from. particularly in the locations, particularly so where your ancestors descended from. Particularly in the places where your ancestors came from. Particularly in the place where your ancestors historically dwelled. The obsession with the macabre is to induce a preoccupation with violence, and thus a greater readiness to fight any predator, given that one is exposed to constant assault. Fear, for a similar purpose, always ready to run. Sometimes cowards survive. Believe you me. Premature ejaculation, the full sexual experience that generates the great good experience between one mortal and another, allowing kinship, is not only psychically expensive, taxing the body, it leaves one physically vulnerable to predators. Erroneously, premature ejaculation leaves one confronted with scarcity of sex. Premature ejaculation ensures less vulnerability when one has access to sex, and a greater chance of passing one's genes. Uncontrollable bowels to remain light at all times, ready to outrun any predator that approaches. More prepared to outrun, more enabled to outrun any predator that gives chase. And these defense mechanisms are all wrought of low energy. This body type elicits the hatred of those who have transformed of the high mind, who can afford the psychic and physical luxuries of being supported, cared for. They see you and instinctively know that you are not cared for. Whenever you plead with them to not be abused, all they can think of is, we are cared for. Were you to ask them why they abuse you, were they to be honest, their soul would cry forth, because my mother loved me, and yours did not. And that my mother loved me, and yours did not. My mother loved me, and yours did not. And yours did not. Check your power supply. You cannot lust for beauty, then protest its unfairness. This mortal being behaves that way around soap, because there are dead This mortal being behaves this way around soap and turds. These mortal beings, this mortal being of an abused